Putin is scared to deploy their best tank, but why? Previously, he was scared to deploy their best fighter jet, and we explained why. But why is he scared to deploy the T-14 Armata tank? Its cannon can fire laser-guided anti-tank missiles. Its armor is impenetrable to anything but nuclear weapons. It can kill 10 American M1 Abrams standing front to back in a row with just one shot. If the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Russian military bloggers are to be believed, the T-14 is the deadliest tank ever created. Past, present, and future. But if so good, why isn't it in Ukraine where it's needed the most? The T-14 really is quite impressive, at least on paper. Then again, up until 8 months ago, the Russian military was also quite impressive. On paper, if the T-14 was a paper year, though it was one with some serious capital investment. We know after 8 months of war that the Russian government never lies, and we do know that the T-14 Armata has been announced in full production at least half a dozen times in the last 10 years. Originally, the Russian military was supposed to acquire 2,300 of these monsters between 2015 and 2020, making Western analysts absolutely brown their pants at the time, back when the West actually believed a single word coming out. However, when 2015 rolled around, not a single T-14 had been delivered, and the tank was still in prototype testing in 2016. Some Western news outlets reported that the T-14 was in fact on its way to crushing democracy. The National Interest ran a story on March 13, 2016 saying, "Surprise, Russia's lethal T-14 Armata tank is in production." The source for the article was a quote from a top Russian defense industry executive, or basically a trust me bro. Yet 2016 came and passed without a single T-14 in active service, and by July 20, 2018, Russia made the announcement that in effect, he definitely postponed any deliveries of similar to the announcement made on the Su-57 Felon around that same time period. In 2021, a Russian state-owned task media outlet reported that the tank would finally begin serial production in 2022, with serial production starting in December 2021. Mysteriously, not a single T-14 that's been verified to be in active military service, though tasks did announce that the tank had been sent to Syria for testing in battlefield conditions. No other media in the world could verify, and rumors circulating online that one T-14 was destroyed by Syrian rebels using an American Tau missile are also unverified. But let's wind the clock back and look at the background of the T-14, its alleged capabilities, and why Russia seems to be incapable of bringing these capabilities to a battlefield near you anytime soon. The T-14 was a seismic shift in Russian tank design. Back in 2010, Russia was developing the T-95, an upgrade over traditional Soviet-style tank designs. However, it was concluded that what Russia needed to be a relevant tank force in future conflicts was not an upgrade, but with a complete evolutionary leap forward, leaving old Soviet tank design behind. The United States faced a similar problem back in the 1980s when it introduced the M1 Abrams. Originally, the US was simply going to continue evolving its M60 main battle tank, but the threat of overwhelming numbers of armed forces in Eastern Europe meant that it was time to throw the entire design out and work on something brand. Like the M1 Abrams, it was built to face a specific threat, a defensive land battle against overwhelming numbers. The T-14 was born from discarded Soviet upgrades with the goal of building the tank around brand new technologies. It would be Russia's boldest leap forward in tank design for generations. While today it's easy to consider the Russian military laughable, the truth is Soviet designers knew what they were doing and making. The Soviet Union fielded some truly fearsome tanks, many times superior to their Western counterparts. While the West held the advantage in the air and at sea, the Soviet Union was decisively the superior land power. Perhaps not in doctrine, but certainly in its armored forces. This expertise has continued to be handed down to modern Russia. And if at least half of its capabilities were real and not propaganda, it was a weapon to be feared. The T-14 would ditch traditional Soviet-style holes to feature a more Western-style boxy turret and a low-profile body. This makes the T-14 a smaller target on the battlefield and can seriously improve crew safety by keeping them out of the line of fire. However, this redesign fixes one major flaw in nearly all tanks. Russia has in service today a flawed scene in full effect in Ukraine that has spawned an endless host of memes. Russian tanks store ammunition in the armored turret, which makes it easier for the autoloader to do its job. However, this also leaves the tank extremely vulnerable to top attack. Any hit on the turret is guaranteed to light off this ammunition. In effect, Russian tanks have a tendency to blow their top sky high and send the vaporized ashes of their crews into the stratosphere. Western designers, meanwhile, decided their tanks should be tanks and not rockets, and put the ammunition in the specially designed storage spaces with the blowout panels. The T-14 takes a cue from the West in this regard, much to the relief of the Russian tank. With no hopes of becoming astronauts one day, the T-14 introduces a brand new feature that even the United States has yet to adopt. The turret can typically be a serious liability for the crew, and for it to do its job, it can't be as well armored as the rest of the body. That's bad news for the tank commander, whose seat is typically in the turret. However, the T-14 features an unmanned turret, which allows the crew to remote control it from the safety of their seats inside the body of the tank. In fact, the entire crew compartment is a densely protected armored capsule that the crew sits in, affording greatly increased survivability. The tank also features an upgraded barrel with an increased range and lethality, as well as a host of modern upgrades, including GPS, satellite communications, and even a meteorological mass to feed the environmental data to the fire control computer to greatly increase accuracy. So if the T-14 is so competent, why in the world isn't it in full production and storing the front lines in Ukraine today? Russia's attitude toward the T-14 appears to be a con. The nation has gone to great lengths to tout its lethality and capabilities over even the most advanced Western designs, and is putting great effort into pressuring nations like India to buy it. Yet the Russian government seems completely uninterested in actually buying the tank itself. At the Army 2022, Expo Russo Border owns Expo, the state-owned arms company that manufactures the Armata line of combat vehicles, was seen trying to garner international interest for the T-14s, while a TASS news article continued to speak out about its capabilities. Yet, instead of buying the revolutionary tank itself, Russia was trying to pawn it off on foreign buyers. Remove that, no doubt, raise serious eyebrows from anyone considering buying them. The T-14 might use comparison to the Su-57, widely considered to be a dud and the worst of all fifth-generation fighter designs. The Su-57 was claimed to be superior to even US F-22s, the stealthiest fifth-generation fighter in the world. This was demonstrably a lie. India, which was initially a partner in developing the Su-57, eventually pulled its funding from the program, citing serious questions about its effects, stealth characteristics, and the ability to survive against other fifth-generation aircraft, such as American F-22s and F-35s and Chinese J-20s. Even if Russia wanted to send them to the front lines, there's simply not enough of them to form operational units out of. Instead, these ultra-modern T-14s would find themselves fighting alongside much more dated, making them vulnerable on the battlefield with too few T-14s to be used effectively. Russia's best served by using its old tank stockpiles, rather than sending its new tanks to certain destruction or simply abandonment in Ukraine. After all, the shame of having a Ukrainian farmer tow away Russia's most advanced tank with a tractor might be what finally does the Russian military in. Now go check out why Putin is scared to deploy the Su-57 in Ukraine, or click this other video instead.